everybody. It's Alex Swallow here, and welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. In this episode, I'm very excited to introduce you to Gareth Davies. Gareth is a renowned executive television producer of shows like Strictly Come Dancing and Top of the Pops, who is now one of the industry's leading presenter coaches. As an interviewer, it was a struggle to resist the temptation to get him to name drop all over the place. Gareth co-founded the Presenter Studio with fellow executive producer Leon Campbell in 2013. And since then, the company has honed and nurtured talent at every level of the TV and film industry, working with the likes of Hugh Grant and Madonna, all the way through to aspiring actors and presenters just starting their careers. In our conversation, Gareth helps us to think about what coaches and leaders can learn from the people who have mastered the art of appearing on stage and screen. Also, what can coaching give back to the creative industries? Plus, he reflects on what it takes to help people embody their authentic selves and communicate to audiences of all sizes. I really appreciated Gareth's expertise, but also his humility, warmth, and openness. His own career is a testimony to a lesson he shares with us about the concept of hustle and the benefits of going the long way round. I was particularly interested in his thoughts on how to identify the aspects of your personality that reflect who you are in a relatable, interesting way. And I believe it will also benefit a lot from his thoughts about presentation skills, tips and approaches that can help you communicate with authenticity and impact. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Gareth Davies, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast.
Thank you very much. I thought there was going to be a big, long intro there, Alex. We're on. We've started.
I love that. No, that was my fault. And we'll keep this in because this is, I think it's a really useful lesson for the show, is that one of the things that I think is really interesting about hosting a podcast is that you want to have this balance between getting out all the questions that you want to ask and engaging the guests in the way you want to, and just letting the conversation flow. So if anyone was listening there, I stepped in at exactly the wrong moment, but that's hopefully a useful lesson and a lesson in coaching. So I think we'll leave that in. So great to have you on the show. I'm so excited to have you here. There's all sorts of things about your work and the way you show up that I admire. And could you just tell me in your own words a bit about what it is that you do?
So I'm a former TV producer, and that for me is always going to be in my heart and kind of part of who I am and what I do. But then I moved into presenter training and presenter coaching about 11 years ago. So I suppose if I'm honest to myself now and kind of had to give myself a label, it would be presenter coach, in brackets, former TV producer, close brackets.
I like that summary. That's amazing. And I just wanted to ask before we kick off, so how much of what you do is coaching? Because you're a bit of a different guest to some of the guests we've had on. We have such a range of guests. Some people are pure coaches who only do coaching. Some people, like myself, I do some coaching. I have some consultancy, some different things. And you use coaching in your work. And I don't believe we've had anyone from your profession on the show before. So how much does coaching come into your work, do you think?
Well, I was told about, I think it must be about 3 years ago now, that apparently I have a portfolio career. I didn't realise that I had that. But you're right, it's very much a facet of what I do. But when people come I run a company called the Presenter Studio, as I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. And when people come to the Presenter Studio, it's very tailor-made. So some people, I'm about to start working with a former England female rugby player, and that very much is a coaching progress. So she's come to us for kind of initial coaching session, and then she wants to go on a journey to get to specific goals. So with her, it's very much a coaching program. For other people, it can almost be a one-stop shop. They come in, they want a quick fix, they want to be good at something, and they get out. It's very much part of that portfolio space, but something that I really enjoy. It's nice to have that long kind of term relationship with the client rather than in a way them coming in, having a quick fix and going.
Amazing. And one of the things, dear listener, that I'm very excited about is I'm I'm not the sort of most celeb following person, but when I look at the clients that Gareth has worked with, even I know them all. So I think that's a sign of the stardom. We're not talking Z-listers here. These are really impressive people. And I think you've just given a bit of a flavour there, the different ways in which you work with people, which I really want to get into. And one thing which I think is really useful for our listeners and for coaches to understand is there's so many ways that you can coach. You can use it in so many different contexts, and you can really build the business that you want. And one of the things in your journey, which I really want us to get into later on, is the fact that you now have your own business, but you've been working in institutions and very famous institutions for a large amount of your career as well. So before we delve more deeply into your career, I'd like to ask you the question that we ask everybody that comes on the show, which is, when did you first hear of this thing called coaching? Do you know?
You make it sound like an alien life form, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. Discovered. Yeah.
Well, funny enough, I had a friend of a friend who was a coach, a life coach, and that was when I was staff at the BBC. And very much my career in television is very sort of like contract to contract. You don't have like a long view, if you like, of kind of the world or a career. It's just kind of job to job. So I used to look at her and just think, how odd. And like, what does she really kind of do? And it doesn't really sort of make sense to me, because it's the total opposite of how we work in television. We don't have coaches. We don't have HR departments. We don't have careers, if you like, in a way. We just have kind of jobs. But a mate of mine who I used to work with in BBC News left the BBC pretty much at the same time as me, when the BBC pretty much binned all their staff members, and turned to coaching through this friend of hers. And very quickly sort of started to love the learning side of it, but the helping side of it, the people side of it. So she then gave me a place on a coaching course run by the Mo Foundation. I don't know if you know the Mo Foundation.
We've had some people on the show connected to the Mo Foundation. We've got one of the other presenters is connected to the Mo Foundation. Yeah.
Got you. So I went on a course there as a life coach. And for me at that point, it was a really nice way of looking at a different kind of part of the training, sort of coaching that I was doing. But at the same time, a really lovely way of dipping into sort of how other people run courses and how other people kind of give information out. So I then really sort of tweaked how I run things and do things off the back of that. So yeah, that was how I first came about the coaching side of things, and sort of fell in love with it, really.
I love your the discovering the alien civilization. I think it's actually it's a very apt comparison, because actually, you know, one of the things that I notice is that there's a lot of people who come across coaching and they realize it was something that they've kind of done some part of. So I can't claim it as much for myself as for some people. Some people, I think, have always been natural coaches, and it's just been the way in which they interact with other human beings, which is really interesting. And for other people, it's at least that they can see echoes of things that relate to coaching in things that they've already done. Because, you know, so much of coaching is using those amazing human skills to listen to other people, to really be present with people in a busy, noisy world. And sometimes when you hear about coaching, you're like, oh, I see. It's that thing which I already have some knowledge of, but I didn't know it was called coaching. At least that seems to happen for a lot of people.
Yeah, really interesting. And I think so much of my background in television, working as a TV producer, where I'll work with talent and help talent and find talent and nurture talent and develop talent, a lot of that is kind of telling, to be honest. And it's kind of very much me writing a script, getting together with you, Alex, on a show, whatever it might be, and just saying, you know, we've kind of got half an hour to film all this stuff, get up and doing it. But that's kind of my skill set, is working people out, writing a script in your voice, thinking, how can I get Alex to really perform in this half an hour? So the coaching side of thing, when it's much more long form and much more kind of feeding it to somebody else to sort of, you know, come up with their own thoughts and patterns and guiding them, for me is almost the total opposite. And I really liked that, in a sense of, rather than sort of telling, it's sort of guiding and helping and almost supervising in a way, which sometimes I feel in careers particularly now, I think, I don't know whether it's a new thing or not, but I do feel sometimes people want a quick fix. They want to kind of go to someone, get a quick bit of advice, get a job. But my career didn't happen like that. I've had to graft, I've had to learn, I've had to nurture, develop. And I think, therefore, we can all take from that coaching long form way of working some really, really valuable skills that I think long-term wise will help you a lot more than just kind of quick fixes in a way. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I can just, even when I was looking at your website and looking at some of the things that you've done, I can kind of see a coaching approach in some of the things that you're doing, which might not be pure coaching. For example, your understanding of people. I was watching a video where you were explaining about finding the judges for Strictly. And it's like your understanding not only of who would be good, but also who would be good in relation with other people. That seems to me like a coaching skill, because it's almost like you were coaching a team, that you have to have an understanding not only of the individual members, but how it functions as a team. And also that you really understood the particular context in which that team needed to operate. So you spoke about, for example, you might need someone who would have a very definite opinion because they only had a short amount of airtime to sum it up and say what they thought of the particular dancers. So is that something that you've noticed echoes of coaching in a lot of those types of things?
Yeah, I think so much of the work that we do and so much of the choice that I would make when I was doing a lot more TV producing is around kind of placing people within a team and also helping people realize that they need to fit in with that team. And I think with anything, in a way, I suppose there are rules of every game, aren't there? There's the rules of how that kind of team operate, what they're looking for. But certainly in my background in television, they're kind of very hidden rules. And I think if we all know the game, if we know how to play it, you can bend them, you can break them. But yeah, it's definitely a skill set I think that I've got and that I try and help people with. It's not in a way good enough to just be a good presenter or good at kind of anything. It's kind of being able to actually work with other people and be aware of what you're actually offering to that other, to that group, really. And as a producer in television, I'm always looking at it thinking, what is wrong with Alex? If I hire Alex, if I work with Alex, what is going to be wrong with it? I've got the assumption that you're going to be great, you've got all the skills to work with, but actually, what is he going to be like? Is he going to turn up on time? Is he going to be passionate? Is he going to be interesting? Is he going to be fun? Is he going to be funny? Is he going to stay in the office until 10 at night? Was actually, I want to leave at 5 o'clock. So you're looking for all of those things because in advance of working with you, I want to know them. And if you are going to be a bit of a pain in the bum to kind of work with, if I know in advance, that's kind of fine because I might take the risk on you. But yeah, a very risk-averse industry, I'd say. And again, that's why it's quite a hard industry, television, to get into because we just don't help, we don't develop, we don't nurture, and we don't feed back. So again, yeah, I think that's definitely a skill I've got is sort of finding new, developing new, and I've got a real passion for it as well of sort of helping new people get into TV, but also again through the business coaching I do, new voices, new businesses, or indeed big businesses getting into new spaces, communicating in different ways to grow a business. So again, I really love doing all of that, and so much of that is having, I suppose, the skill and talent and passion for working people out, really. Yeah.
It's good. I was laughing inside because I was thinking we might be a long form podcast, but if we're gonna delve into all the things potentially wrong with Alex, and we might need to add on a bit of time at the end, we've got the longest podcast on in the Coach's Journey podcast history. We could go for that. But I wanted to ask you about, so I really encourage you to drop lots of names. I mean, we had a pre-call, and I was talking to you about some of the names that I've heard that you've worked with, but there's this sort of starry, side of what you do, both from the people you've met and worked with, and the institutions, businesses, companies that you've worked with and for. But how did you get into this? And you've said about the grafting. I'm sure it's very much not all glamorous. When starting off in your career, one of the great things about talking to you is I've never met somebody from your profession. I've never spoken to somebody in quite your profession. So I'd love to know, is this what you always wanted to do? Were you born to do this? Did you think you were going to do something else? How did it work?
Interesting. So when I was a kid, I did a little bit of singing, a little bit of acting. So I was in the musical Evita for about 6 months when it came up to Manchester. I had like a little bit part in Coronation Street, little bits of extra work stuff as a kid.
Okay. I'm a big Curry fan. So, okay. We could go on for a long time about that. Okay, so
It was a very long time ago. And then I went to university and did music and drama and realised actually that I was a really rubbish actor because I can't remember scripts for the life of me. So what would I do? So I basically just saw that was in the Times where we looked in newspapers and we kind of flicked through. I think it was The Guardian on a Tuesday. I think had like the media supplement with all the media kind of jobs. And I just saw a job advertised at the BBC for a job that was called a floor assistant, which basically is someone who every day you would work on a different show and you would look after the artists on the studio floor. So on a Thursday, I do Top of the Pops. Monday, I do Blue Peter. Wednesday, I do the National Lottery. Tuesday, I do Watchdog. Saturday night, I do, I don't know, Raw Variety or something. So a whole host of things. So very quickly, I suppose, I got into a staff job at the BBC. But very quickly, I got to work with people. And often those people would be nervous. I'd be kind of the right-hand man for the presenter on the day. And then just kind of developed my career at the BBC from researcher to producer. But so much of that at that point was me coming up with my own program ideas, pitching them, developing them, and then making them. Left the BBC, went freelance, carried that kind of cycle on, if you like, of working with the production companies or channels, pitching ideas, getting them over the line, then making them. So I've always been quite a hustler. I've never been really someone who kind of gets given something. I've always been someone who kind of hustles and creates opportunities for myself. So then 12 years ago, with the now exec producer of Gogglebox on Channel 4, Leon, we decided to set up the presenter studio out of our kind of pure frustration, really, of the lack of development of talent in television. So much of my career in TV is, for example, helping develop Strictly Come Dancing, as you said before, finding those judges, developing them, coaching them, helping them, putting them on screen as new talent. And so much of my career has been born out of that, new ideas, new people. But there's just nowhere to go to get kind of help or kind of nurturing or any sort of feedback. So we want to sort of set up a space where actually it was run by people in the industry to try and help establish names, but also new people coming in. But very quickly then we started working with brands, and that's where really the coaching side of things came in, where absolutely we've got this real skill set of working with presenters, writing content, creating content, and producing talent. But then in the corporate space, it always felt quite dry and quite grey. And you just look at it and how people communicate and just think, God, blooming heck. And then you look at kind of online, just see all these corporate presentation skills training programs and media training things. You just think, gosh, it's like going back to the 1950s. And is this really how people... Well, not even 1950s, I don't know. I just sort of look at it and just think back to the alien life form, really. Is that how we all speak? And gosh, and why are people speaking for so long and using all this corporate jargon? And so very quickly, we started working with brands in a really kind of detailed way, much more of that coaching kind of way, running specific training programs or coaching programs that work to like a specific problem that they might have, and shaking up that world. And that world is just something that I absolutely love doing because it's very different to my background. And often I'll kind of walk into a space with so much research and planning and, I don't know, just so much development, as I would do if I'm about to do a show. I'm not going to walk into a studio unless I know exactly what I'm doing. So it's the same if I'm running a training program for a business. And I love it when I walk in, and often I'd say the majority of that people in the room don't really want to be there. They've done some sort of course before. They're looking a little bit peeved about the cold coffee and the fact that there's no windows in the room. And they're the kind of people I love getting my hands on and kind of working with, because I think communication can change people personally so much, professionally so much. And also because I come from such a creative background, not only will I think, right, they want a bit more confidence of presentations, I'll also go on their social media, on their website, on their LinkedIn profiles and think, well, hang on a minute, how can I do this really 360? How can I look at everything that they're doing and push and pull them? So at the end of the session, they're like, my gosh, we came for this, we've got that, we've got all this extra stuff. And we've actually had quite a good time. And actually, I've got something out of it personally and professionally. So I love that. I love kind of turning people around. Whereas in telly, often, we're all kind of quite smiley. We go into a space, we're just going to do it, have a nice time, and we go home. But in that corporate way, sometimes I think people can feel it's going to be a bit dry and a bit grey, which I think is a lovely challenge for us to kind of do something a bit different, a bit fresh, and a bit current in that space. Yeah.
That's all amazing to hear. There's Robbie, the founder of The Coach's Journey, actually, at one point, he wanted to be an actor. So he actually studied maths at university, but student drama was his big thing. And he wanted to be an actor at one point. And one of the reasons why I personally was so interested in having you on the show is that for me, I'm terrified of acting. I always was at school. And it was probably, apart from having to do forward rolls in gymnastics, it was the thing I was most terrified of. And yet I love public speaking. I would be happy to speak in front of millions of people, and I wouldn't be happy to act in front of 5. I could do it. Like when I was at university, I sort of forced myself to be in a student play and utter one line because I like to push myself a bit. But for me, one of the things which is really different between the sort of acting and the speaking or presenting, as I see it, is that I'm very comfortable being myself and presenting myself. And I think presenting something else or somebody else, like portraying a character, is what I find scary, because for me, I feel like someone else could do a better job of that, but no one else could do a better job of representing me. And so one of the things I find really interesting about your work, especially as you're an actor yourself, is the idea that, do you generally find that when people say come on a course with you, are they worried that you're going to get them to act? Is that something that they're scared of? Because if I was coming on a course with you, the presenting bit I would be so excited about, and anything where I had to be a different character, say, if you do any of that, I'd be terrified about. So what's that like in the mix?
Yeah, it's a really good thought and a good area. And I think, just to tell you a little story with that, I suppose, we often do quite a lot of coaching in Dubai. We had a lady who did a course once who wanted to help us set up an office over there. And there's one course that I really remember with it was quite a lot of people who worked in the beauty industry, and she was a salon owner. I think at that point she just had one salon, I think, in Dubai. But Dubai it's quite, from the small experience I've had with it, it's quite hustly. And a lot of the business kind of people over there, they have quite big ambitions, I think, sometimes. Just having one salon might not be enough. I want to do social media. I want to have another salon. I want to get sponsored deals for my socials and that kind of thing. So anyway, but sometimes you won't necessarily know people's big ambition. But there was one lady when I walked into that space who was petrified, and she clearly was sort of shaking. And clearly, I don't know why, in a way, she was sort of almost there. I don't know if she'd been gifted it by somebody else. And for me, walking into that room, seeing her, I knew instantly, possibly, I suppose you're never 100% sure, but I kind of looked at her and thought, she's going to be by far the best person in this room, because she just had, I think, this authentic self straight away, a little bit vulnerable, a little bit shy. And that's the kind of person sometimes that I really, really love working with. And all it is helping that person simply, in a way, just be themselves. And I think so much of presenting, people put on a funny voice, it gets a bit corporate, we choose corporate language, corporate jargon, we try and be too perfect. Was that one person, all I wanted to capture was her kind of passion for what she did, her love for what she did. So I think we sort of got there by the end of the day, and I think there were definitely tears. I think after about an hour, I think she left for quite a bit of time, I think, during the day. And now she's totally turned around that whole business. I can't remember how many salons she's got in Dubai. She's also now opened up in Abu Dhabi. And she's done it all by putting herself front and center on camera, on Instagram, in a sense of just being the face of that business, having the confidence to share her passion and her love for her subjects and what she does, but in that really authentic way that you were saying before. So I think so much of presenting is actually having the confidence to just be yourself. In TV, it's what we call being a produced version of you. All I'm going to do is I'm going to look at Alex. I'm going to think, right, what can I produce up about you that makes you sometimes more relatable, because it's all about an audience, of how you're going to appeal to an audience, sometimes a little bit different, but also a little bit interesting, you know. And I think sometimes Americans are quite good at it. Sometimes if you look at kind of communications with people in America, your average Joe on the street, you put a camera in front of their face and they're just great at chatting. Sometimes I think as British people, we can be a little bit shy. We can be a little bit kind of awkward about coming forwards. But that's also incredibly endearing. And actually, yeah, the flip side of that is very quickly, the polar opposite of that sometimes can be that one person in the room who is really confident, they're really loud, they're quite gregarious. And that's the person that I look at and think they're going to be really hard to work with, because that doesn't sustain. If someone's kind of like, you know, a 9 out of 10 on energy, on passion, professional, slick presenter techniques, you know, we switch off after 2 minutes. It's not relatable. It's not warm. It's not friendly. So absolutely, you're right, Alex. I think, you know, having that confidence to be simply yourself, I think is the right way to go. But it's a really hard thing as well. And I think for all of us, how many of us have listened to us back on a phone message? You know, the message you have to leave on your phone, please leave me a message. I think in the old days when you used to kind of record it on your landline phone, you keep listening to it, so think, God, do I really sound like that? It's awful. And now on socials, and people record and record and record the same thing over and over and over again. You know, how many of us, I suppose, like watching ourselves back or like ourselves in that way? Very few. And again, I suppose that's why we love stepping in and helping people just find that confidence to simply be themselves. But sometimes a produced version of them is kind of the way to go.
I found that absolutely fascinating, the way that you explained that and the produced version of people, because I was looking at some of the videos on your business's YouTube channel, and the ones that I found most interesting were the ones where you were working with a client to essentially have a produced version of themselves. So, and these were some of the people I didn't know because I didn't watch the show. So there was someone from The Only Way is Essex, for example, I think. There was a TV doctor who I did recognize, actually. But for example, for the doctor, it was the very first image that came up about him was his love of extreme sports. He was on a wave. And I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. Or for the guy from Towie, it was the fact that he just added in these things about loving shopping so much and what have you. And I think actually it's really nice to see that what you're not trying to do is to put people into boxes, almost this cookie cutter approach. And, you know, we getting into almost AI things now, and how much content is starting to be produced by AI. It really, I get the impression, I don't know whether you'd characterize this as true, but through your work, it feels to me you lean into people's humanity. Like, it's not about it, but it's also at the same time, you say to people, these are the things that are going to help you. And that's one, because you know the industry. And secondly, it's because, and this is exactly the same as any form of coaching, until we have things reflected back to us, we don't know how other people will find it. Like, sometimes I would say that the way that people interpret me or interpret anybody is probably not how I interpret myself. It's like listening to myself on that phone message or something like that. You're like, oh, so that's how people see me. If I turn that up a bit, or I tone that down a bit, I'll be more relatable to these people, and you know the audience. Is that kind of how you work with people?
Yeah, massively. I mean, so much of the work we do, we call it personal branding, but also the extension of that is kind of marketing. And, you know, as we all know, that old age kind of saying is people buy people. But it's very hard, I think, sometimes, as you said before, to know, how do I come across? But also, I think more than that, how do I want to come across? And I think, you know, perhaps for any coaches listening to this or kind of watching it, I think for all of us in a competitive area, competitive market, competitive industries, I think it's really important that we find our own voice, we find our own style. So again, we're very visual in how we work. If it's personal branding, we'll look at everything from your website, your socials, What are the colours you've used on your website? What's the language that you've got there? So if it is me looking for a coach, am I relating to them? Am I warming to them? Or again, sometimes is it too professional? Or that might be the kind of coach I want. I do want a really professional kind of coach. So yeah, it is very much an exercise in personal branding, having that understanding of how you want to come across. And we always talk to people about it being a 3-dimensional brand. In that often I think we all hunt for this sort of professional side of things. You know, that kind of job title is how we started today, wasn't it? In a sense of what's my job title? But I'd say once you've kind of got that, that's point number one. That's the given. That's the professional side of Alex or Gareth. But what are the two other things that help you be you? So that TV doctor that you talked about before, he is a surfer. He's a real dude, a bit of a bloke, bit of a geezer, gay, but it was also this doctor. So for me, that's so much to play with in a sense of he's a bit of a surfer dude. There's a real energy to that. There's a speed to that. There's a pace to that. So that's what you then want to capture. So that's then the language on the website. That's the kind of the tone of the video. That should be the tone of his socials. So when you're then looking for a TV doctor, I'm going to get that compared to another client of ours, Dr. Philippa, who's now the resident doctor on This Morning. She's very much a white, middle-class mum. And it's a little posh, but it's a little bit kind of motherly, if you like. We're just going to have a nice cuddle together. I'm going to be very slow in the way that I kind of speak. There's no judgment, and it's a warm, safe kind of space with a cup of tea and a slice of cake. So yeah, it's really interesting and exciting, I think, if we kind of think about, you know, that personal branding. How do I want to come across? What are my points of difference? We can start to create unique spaces for ourselves, which I think then help us to be more marketable. They help us to bring in more clients, and they help us to kind of stand out, I think, sometimes in a crowded space, which is what we all want to do, really.
I think for our listeners, I think this is absolute gold dust, because one of the things that when I speak to other coaches, I notice, and I'm part of a coaching community in Sheffield where I live, and these are some of the sort of conversations that we have where people feel that they have to do things in a certain way. They have to grow their business in a certain way. They have to be maybe a certain sort of person and really change who they are. And I think the sort of things that you're talking about, which is about people showing up more than themselves, more as themselves. And also when you said it's not just about business, it's like if we show up as our full selves and we reveal the amount that we actually want to reveal, then we will enjoy our work more, you know, because we're not putting on that mask to that same extent. We can still have our private lives. And that's the other thing, I suppose, is knowing the balance, because everybody has a different balance. You know, these days, there are people who will share absolutely every aspect of their lives online. And there will be some people who will be less comfortable with doing that. So again, we're not trying to say, I don't think in this conversation, that you must share everything about yourself. It's about what you want to share, what makes you different, and what makes you feel more you. Because if you feel more you, then you're going to do your best work. Is that explaining it as you would? What do you think?
Definitely. I think, you know, celebrating your points of difference, but I think they can be quite hard things to do. But, you know, often when we send out a little form for any client who comes and works with us, one of the little questions on there is, you know, how would your mates describe you? And sometimes it's kind of that is, again, like, how would someone else perceive you as a coach? If you're looking for kind of new clients, new work, you know, how do you want to be perceived? What is your kind of your thing, your way of doing it? And in telly, we're such experts in that, and we're so quick at working it out. I used to work in, I used to love this bit. I used to work in children's at the BBC, and the producer of this, it was really early on in my career, this producer of a children's TV drama I was working on called Julia Jekyll and Harriet Hyde, it was. He was the former producer of Rent-A-Go. So do you remember Rent-A-Go?
Oh, yeah.
So that was his show, I think, all those years ago. And then Julia Jekyll and Harriet Hyde was like a new version of Rent-A-Go's. This guy was just the most, I don't know if he's still with us, he was the most glorious character. And this was drama. So, you know, you're very much casting actors and you're asking people to sort of play a role and like presenting or kind of if you're fronting your own business. But he used to watch people walking from main reception at BBC TV Centre to the Children's Tower, which is called the East Tower. And he just used to look at the way they were walking, just go, yes, no, no, yes. Just in that way, in a sense of, I think we're so quick and we're so fast, quite an extreme version of it, of getting people. But I think that's the trick with so much of this is, do people get you? Have I warmed to Alex? Do I trust him with the journey that we're going to go on together? Are we going to have this long-term relationship in that coaching way where actually I will book 10 sessions with Alex because I trust there's a journey with it? And I think if you look at any sort of personalities or business owners, really, I think the ones where you can work them out, where you do know a little bit about them personally, are the ones that fly more. And in a sense, I think are perhaps more impactful because they're just more relatable. But again, it's that produced version of what do you want to share? What will you bring up to the fore that will help you with that relatability? So yeah, I think, but we are experts, I think, at working people out, but it's a honed skill. But I think people are savvy to it now as well. I think people are getting quicker through socials and watching TV. I think people can work people out quite quickly now.
How do you get to that point where one of the things that I think is amazing about receiving coaching, and I think that coaching is so important if you are a coach to get coaching. And I first heard about coaching because I had a coach, and then you learn how good it can be. One thing is that I think coaches, as a sort of generalization, are quite in touch with themselves in the sense that hopefully most coaches have had coaching, been on coach training, which will also develop this. But coaches to me tend to be people who are very curious about the world and their place in it. Like, typically, not every single coach, there's lots of different types of people within the world of coaching. But what I find is when you have a conversation with other coaches, there's a lot of sort of understanding of, that about people's values, that people have different personality types, the way people relate to each other. And so what I'm wondering is when you have people come to work with you, how much of the work is helping them to understand their values and really who they are? And, so again, it might be a coach listening who's thinking, well, I don't really know what the real me is. And, a lot of coaches come from other professions where perhaps they weren't so much their whole selves. And so how do you bring people into that space of thinking about who they actually are? Do you do particular exercises? Do you pre-prep them before they come to your training? Is there anything that you can share that you think might be helpful?
God, that's a really interesting question. I suppose whoever comes and works with us, we ask them to fill out a form to begin with to tell us about them. And then often we will then latch onto stuff, as you did do with the doctor before. He was the snowboarder. We'll latch onto something that looks a little bit different. You think, oh, that's different. There's something in that. There's a tone of voice in that. But often I think, Alex, to sort of answer perhaps your question in a slightly different way, and we sort of touched on it a little bit before, is just kind of marketing, really, in a sense of you can be the world's best brand, you can be the world's best speaker, personality, coach, but if there's no one out there to buy it, it's a bit of a waste of time. So again, when we work with businesses and brands, but also in television, it is often about who is this for? And I know for you, I think on your LinkedIn, I think you've got, is it sort of high net achievers or something you've got as your strap line, your type of client. And therefore, again, when it comes to this brand, you've then got to think, well, then who is this for? What type of person do I want to attract? If it is that more high net worth individual, your stuff might look a little bit glossier. It might be a bit more considered, but it might be in the tech world. And the tech world actually is quite casual and quite t-shirt led. So it might not be. But, again, just often thinking, who is this audience? Who is this for? And that often can really help you, I think, again, when it comes to thinking about how you want to come across. But I think that trick of kind of three-dimensional, writing down your job title, coach, and then thinking, what are those other two beats, those other 2 points that might make it unique to you? One might be the fact that you're a parent and therefore you're already nurturing and developing, and so many of us are parents, so therefore that's relatable. Another one might be a moment in your life where you've come across I don't know, a little bit of a trip or a bridge that you've had to cross yourself, again, to make it more relatable in that coaching space. I think, having that kind of story, that journey piece yourself, I think can help you. So yeah, I think sometimes, thinking, who is this for, I think can really, really help you. And I think, again, that's where a lot of our clients will stumble or struggle or get stuck, is that it's all great and it looks brilliant, Alex, and you've got a great website and great socials. But actually, I don't know who any of this is for. You've not really thought about that kind of audience. So you've then got to always have that in mind. And that for us, I think, as a business and as a coach, is, as you said before, a constant learning exercise and something that we're always looking at. And sometimes I think our website, we look too glossy, we look too sparkly, and therefore for the business people, they think they're going to get gloss and sparkle. Yes, of course, that's my background, but I've also worked in news as a journalist. That's perhaps my three-dimensional brand. So I am a bit of a thinker, I'm a researcher. So it can be really hard, I think, to know how am I coming across. And sometimes, again, as we talked about before, ask a mate, ask them as well with it, get some advice, or as you said as well, get some coaching too.
Yeah, that's really helpful, I think, because, one of the main reasons why the coach's journey exists is to encourage people to build their businesses as coaches and to stay within the world of coaching. Because, as I was actually saying to you before the call, I think that there's lots of people who like the coaching aspect, don't like or don't feel competent at the business aspect. So what happens is people will, for example, go on a piece of coach training, be really excited, want to go out and start engaging with people. But it's like, how do people build that into a business? How does that really happen? And there's a concept that I think you've introduced, which I really wanted us to reflect on a little, about hustle, that you were mentioning for your own career, and you were mentioning for the lady in Dubai who has gone on to be very successful. And so I was wondering, there are certain formulas that people can follow when they're growing their business, and we've spoken about the important thing of being authentic and sharing yourself and working out what that is. But I really like to think about that hustle thing, because I believe that that's a really important quality, because at least until you find out what you're good at or what's going to work for you, because if you're building a business, you might hit on something that you realize is going to be the thing that will build your business until the end of time, because you're really good at that particular thing. And, I come across coaches who they'll have their niche and they'll do things in a certain way and they won't worry about anything else, and they've built the life that they like. But maybe to get there, they had to try a variety of things that were outside their comfort zone or they didn't like. So, but that hustle thing, though, do you think I'm going to kind of ask you a nature-nurture question. Is it something that's always been within you, or is it that you realize you needed to do it to get to your goals? How did you sort of discover your own hustling capability, so to speak?
I think it is always something that's been in me. I think, I did pretty well at school and pretty well in my A-levels and degree. But I was a grafter. I wasn't the sort of person that could quickly look at a book and memorize all the kind of you need to do. So I suppose I've always felt probably that I worked slightly harder than everybody else. And then one of the first jobs I got at the BBC was on a show called The Weakest Link, which is a quiz show with Anne Robinson. And I looked around the room and it was quite moneyed, everybody in there. And they were all quite sort of London-centric, very white kind of office. And there's sort of a Welsh sort of northerner, quite working class, both parents, teachers. I thought, oh, everyone here is quite posh. And at my university, in a way, they're all quite posh. I thought, I quite like this, all a little bit different to me. But then when you sort of got talking to them, a lot of them sort of seemed to know somebody else in television or seemed to have got there from something else. And I thought, oh, how do they all know people? And so therefore, I'm a terrible networker. I'm rubbish at kind of doing networking drinks or walking into a space to meet new people. Instead, I'll go the long way around. I'll hustle. I'll come up with my own ideas. So when I was running the presenter studio alongside TV, I'd just get up 2 hours before I go to do my TV work. And I'd be then pumping social media, pumping kind of blogs on the website, answering emails, doing whatever it might kind of be. but that all came in a way, I think, from a place of passion. And I think so much, again, of our coaching and developing talent in people is tapping into what people really love. And I think if you really love your coaching, if you really love helping people, that warmth and that genuine love. And again, we talked before, didn't we, about acting, where sometimes acting is putting on a role. But actually, if there's an authentic love for what you do, I think that can really translate through. So yeah, I think perhaps to answer your question, I have always been a little bit of a hustler. But again, that's why I've really enjoyed running my own business. And while I do co-own it with Leon is still very much in television on Gogglebox for Channel 4. So he has very much still got a full-time job. Unlike the career in TV where you do a show, the day the show finishes, you're out. And then you have to start sending your CV out again. So you're constantly starting it away from scratch. One of the things I love about running a business is I often sort of feel like if I will put out a post on LinkedIn, if I will do a little video on Instagram, I'm putting it out there, but often I will get something back. So I might not get a reply in TV if I've sent my CV out. But actually, if I do get up early, 2 hours early, and do a bit of social media content or a blog or something or an email, I might actually get a gig off the back of that. So I love the sense of if you do run your own thing, if you put in, the chances are you might get back. Whereas my old kind of career in telly, often if I put in, the chances are I'm probably not going to get anything back. But that's that creative industry. You're used to rejection, you're used to no, you're just used to silence. I can't bear silence. I hate it. So running my own thing, pumping it, hustling it, I think suits me really. Yeah, in that perhaps northern stereotypical grafter way. Yeah.
I did notice about that your business, your co-owner, your business partner was involved with Gogglebox, because I thought about it because my cousin's out in South America at the moment, and on her updates she'd had this day of, I think she was shortly going to the Galapagos or something like this, and in the evening she was catching up on Gogglebox. So I thought how it was really beautifully serendipitous that I got to speak to you today, where on the other side of the world my cousin likes Gogglebox. So I thought that was very nice. I was going to ask you though, in terms of this hustle, it sounds to me like you really still have that, because one of the other things that I think perhaps puts people off a kind of running their own business, having a freelance career and being a coach is that they might start in this blaze of glory. They're going to try all these things, but motivation is a key thing. So firstly, if they're just not making enough money to keep things ticking along, you know, they need the money to survive. And so sometimes the necessity means that they leave a profession because they aren't getting enough clients. But also there can be that initial burst of motivation with anything that a person does. But, you know, you do so many different things. You've been very successful in your career. You've built this really interesting business. How do you keep, is that hustle thing ingrained in you? Or do you think to yourself, I'm going to tone down the hustling now? Like, do you keep that? How do you keep that sort of fire of ambition burning, I suppose?
I think now, to be honest, we're just gifted with so many free platforms that you can hustle on. So Instagram, for me, as a business, I worked with a girl quite a long time ago who's like a nail technician. And she got into the papers. I think she was flown over to LA to do Goldie Hawn's nails, I think it was. Like, why is this British girl from London being flown over to America just to do her nails? So we kind of worked with her quite a few years ago, and she looked at my Instagram and she just said, "You're not doing enough. Like, get yourself out there." Like she said, my whole business is built on Instagram. So for me, when it comes to hustle, every single day there's an opportunity to put a bit of content out there, which is an advertisement. So again, if you love what you do and if you're passionate about it, I in a way don't understand why would you not then do it. And Instagram for us, you know, I haven't got a lot of followers with the business. I think we've got about 8,000 now, which is in a way very little. But again, it's that captive audience, growing an audience that might come to you as a business. But also I think in that coaching way, people love learning, they love developing. And again, as a coach, if you can get onto one of those free platforms that you kind of like, put yourself on it, give some free tips and tricks out there, people do come back. And to kind of work with you. I think probably when we run, we've got a 2-day course called a fast track program, and we'll take 4 people across 2 days. I'd say probably 3 out of those 4 will come from Instagram. Somehow they've kind of found us.
Wow.
They like kind of what we do. Often as well, they'll talk about the fact they've been thinking of doing it for years. So again, perhaps if people are struggling to sort of, build that, sort of coaching business, I think, perhaps sometimes people are waiting in the wings for a long time. They're not necessarily putting in that investment quickly. So yeah, I think 2 people on the last course, I don't know, like one woman, I think she said like 3 years, and the one was 2 years. They're thinking, shall I do it? Shall I not do it? Shall I do it? Shall I not do it? But me putting out my little Instagram post every day is just tickling them. It's just kind of, I'm still here. I'm willing to give you this for free, that for free. If I ever do like an Instagram live, I think Instagram lives for us are brilliant. If I ever do an Instagram live giving away a load of tips about something, so it might be, I don't know, whatever tips it might be as part of your coaching career, but sometimes for me it'll be steps to get somewhere, or I'll analyze one bit of communication or presenting or kind of media training, whatever it might be, always off the back of an Instagram live for half an hour. I'll always get bookings off the back of it. And it's not for something that I've promoted. So I've not gone on to promote something. I've just gone on to talk about something. And often off the back of that, if I've got dates available or something available, pretty much it will all sell out. We're a small business, so I'm not talking about 100 people in a Wembley Arena, but whatever I kind of had available will go. So I think, using those free spaces, finding a space that kind of works for you, and sharing passions, I think is a really good way of kind of feeding your business, but putting adverts out there, but perhaps sometimes as well thinking it can be a long-term game rather than a short-term one.
That's really helpful, and I particularly like the concept which we've spoken about before in the coach's journey, which is about how people can. There's so many lurkers on social media, right? There's so many people who will consume content, and Robbie's a really good example of. He'll be very consistent. Robbie, the coach's journey founder, who will be very consistent in putting out, for example, LinkedIn articles and sharing things. And he has a newsletter, and of course, he has a podcast. And sometimes the way that people might find him years later is that people need to get to know other people, especially when I think the thing is with coaching, but also very much with lots of aspects of the work you do, you're coming to someone and you're wearing your heart on the sleeve. You might be talking to a coach about things that you haven't spoken to about with other people. There might be people who work with you who have things holding them back that are very, very personal. And it's like, you're going to go to this person, you're going to give them potentially a not insignificant amount of money, and you're going to basically hold out your hopes and dreams to them and say, now what? Please be gentle with me. And it's kind of, I think, so it would be different if we were selling toothpaste, for example, and we kept showing our toothpaste and our beautiful smiles. That's a bit different. People don't need to trust that other than it's been approved by the relevant, authority or something. But this is, if they're going to come on training with you, they really will spend time with you. And they have to trust that you will support them and really help them. And also that you're credible, because, one thing is as well is that anybody can put something glossy online which will say that you're going to get the results. But if, like you and your co-founder, you're actually people who've shown that you've got those results consistently over time, really have worked with all these brilliant organizations, that's another way of constantly showing your credibility to people that will then get them to trust you, like you, and want to work with you.
Yeah, and social media for us, Instagram has definitely helped with that. And that for us was a real frustration. I think when we first started out, there were so many people out there running presenter training courses, particularly for sort of the TV side of things, but hadn't ever worked in the industry. And again, we're just so unrelated, and actually with the polar opposite of what we look for in telly. They were very much, we'll teach you how to be a professional presenter, we'll teach you how to do auto cue and all those technical things that actually we don't really necessarily use in telly. Whereas we're much more personality-based, find that authentic voice, so almost the polar opposite. And you sometimes look at those people and think, God, blimmin' it, why are they getting all the clients? And we are currently working in telly, and I find talent for a living and put them on screen, but we don't seem to be pulling people in. And therefore, social media for us really helped that, in a sense of just giving information out there, tapping into areas of expertise that you've got. But I definitely think in that coaching space, when I did the coaching program with that mate of mine from BBC News, Naina Palmer, who's a full-time coach and doing really well for herself. So much of that, I think, is based on trust. And do I like this person? But also, does that person get me? And I think when I finished the coaching program with Mo, and I was then wanting to get some coaching myself, it was really important that I found someone who kind of got me, but also got the industry that I wanted to be doing more of, the presenter coaching within businesses more of. And that was quite hard to find. And often, again, I sort of found that people had that professional sort of skill as a coach, but actually, was it a relatable skill? Was it an authentic skill? Do we understand each other as people? So again, sometimes just jumping on your socials, putting little videos out there, sharing stuff about yourself, how you work, giving tips and tricks, can help people like me as a potential customer and consumer work out if you're the right person for me or not. So yeah, not ignoring those free platforms, I think, when it comes to hustling, I think is genius. We talked before about LinkedIn, and I said I'm appalling on LinkedIn and desperate for LinkedIn help. Because in a way, this is what we were talking about before, is, that professional side of things, that job title side of things. It's almost, again, what we sort of don't do in telly. We don't sort of have, TV careers, HR departments, formal sort of CVs, if you like, coaches. So therefore, sort of going on LinkedIn, where it's all about that professional job side, I look at it and just think, gosh, I don't get it. And sometimes, I'll shy away from sharing to people about what shows I've done or celebrities I've worked with, because I just think, well, it's just my job. It's not really that interesting in a way. But LinkedIn is all about sharing that. So yeah, finding a platform that works for you, but also I suppose that is my current hustle is looking at your LinkedIns and all that business presenter coaching that I've sort of been talking about. We love doing it, and we do some great stuff. We work with some brilliant brands: ASOS, Lush, Prudential, Nike, Sage, Barclays Bank. But often pretty much all of that comes from referral. It doesn't come from the website, because I think our keyword sort of searches for media training, presentation skills are quite low on an internet search, because it's quite a saturated market with all those corporate players who did it for so long. So again, for me, the LinkedIns can be a really good way of capturing more of that corporate client that might not be on your Instagrams. But God, it can be a slog. But I quite like a challenge, So it's just a new hustle. It's a new challenge. And I am a bit like a dog with a bone with that kind of thing. I don't give up. But again, I think that just comes from, because I love it so much. I'm passionate about it, rather than kind of from a monetary thing or a success thing. It just comes from the fact that I love it. And I think when we do it, it adds great value. So why not keep on going? Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing for me, is that you're not doing it from a place of lack. Because before we started recording, as you say, we were talking about LinkedIn, and I happen to be a LinkedIn geek. I've been to the LinkedIn offices in London. I love LinkedIn. But what I think, it's completely horses for courses. Like, when I work with people who want to build their personal brand, for example, I always encourage them to find a platform or a way which works for them. And so, as I think that, for example, you have so many interesting different things to share, and I think you could definitely do it for an audience on LinkedIn, and you do have that, hustle feeling about you, and you are ambitious in that way. And for you, I could see it as working. But I think one of the things for our listeners is that it's really good to try all these things, but it's really okay to say, that one isn't for me, or that one isn't for me now, because it can be overwhelming. I always say to people that there are people who prefer to write, there are people who prefer to make videos, there are people who prefer to make podcasts, there are people who prefer to give speeches, go one-to-one, have an email newsletter. There's so many things you can do. And it doesn't matter, as long as you find something which works for you as a person and which works for your business. And so I think one of the things I really want to avoid, I really want people to get away from, is thinking that they have to do things a certain way. And I think you come from an industry and your own career shows that there was no one route through things. You've succeeded despite the lack of formal structure around follow these steps and you'll have a good career helping to produce things. That's not how it worked. What happened, it seems to me, was that you met some people, you found out some things, you spoke to some other people, you tried some things, some worked, some didn't, and you kept going because you really love it. And I think, there's, in the coaching world, there's space for many different types of coaches. There's going to be, for every person listening, there's going to be someone out there for whom you are the absolute perfect coach. There's no better coach for that person because, one of the beautiful things I think about coaching is that sometimes people, for example, don't want a coach who's 20 steps ahead of them. They would like a coach who's a couple of steps ahead of them. So, for example, if you're a coach and you're starting to have some success with your business, or there's one area of your business in which you're having success, you might be a great person to help those other people who aren't quite at the level you're at. And so you might want to share things online about how you've done that. But you don't need to wait and think, oh, there's all these other people who are more successful than me. Their experience might be too distant. They may have achieved it 10 years ago when the world was different. Yeah. And so I think, again, just showing up as completely as yourself encourages people to say, oh, okay, that person's at that place. That seems more relatable to me.
I love that. And that, I think, Alex, was one of the main challenges when we set up the business, I think, was our challenge to make your average Joe who's never done TV presenting before, because that was the heart of the business when we first started, was to coach people for TV. I think sometimes they looked at us and thought, it's not going to be much fun. These guys kind of, have done all this stuff. I don't know if I kind of deserve it. I don't know if that's sort of relatable to where I'm at now in my journey. So therefore, someone who kind of looks a bit similar, but perhaps a bit more kind of lo-fi, probably is the safer, better bet. So really interesting to hear you saying that, because that's something I think over the years, actually, as a business, we've had to really sort of soften in a way. Kind of the stuff we've done in telly, because is it relatable to your average Joe? But at the same time, that's massively what we're also selling and our big points of difference. So I really like that. Yeah, depending on where you're at with your own journey, can, I think, be useful to share and help you find the right person, or the right person find you, rather than necessarily being the best, the biggest.
And it relates so much to what you were saying earlier, because as well as the point on the journey, which are appropriate seeing as we're on a podcast called The Coach's Journey, but actually it's also about, if you're showing up as yourself, there is nobody else exactly like you, but there are people who are going to relate to you more than to other people. So it's kind of, if you can give a bit of your personality as well, is that if that person has got two people to choose from, and one of them is at the right point they're both at the right point on the journey, say, for them, and one of them is more relatable for whatever reason, it's like, that's a really good reason to show up as yourself, because otherwise, if we're all cookie cutters, I don't know how anybody could even decide. And the other thing is that as a coach, I suppose, and this is where being like a coach or bringing coaching is different to some other professions. As a coach, if you don't show up as yourself in terms of a way you put out there into the world, but you're expecting other people to come along to a coaching session with you and show up as themselves, which they have to do in order to be able to help themselves, it feels like it's a bit of a power imbalance, which is like, I don't want the world to know about me, but when you speak to me, I expect you to open up in whatever way is appropriate for you in order for us to work together on whatever you want to work on. So I think done in a safe way, there's a sense of having that sort of vulnerability. And I can say, like, about your website, for example, is that as soon as I spoke to you we had a pre-call, and as soon as I spoke to you, like, I found you very, very easy to talk to, very personable, very friendly. You don't come across as like you're on some pedestal telling people what to do. I think because of your career, because it's quite show busy, because of things you've done, you could, if you wanted to, have an ego and be the big I am. Now, unless you're like that with your mates, that's not how you come across to me. Right? But if I'd just gone to your website and not knowing anything about this stuff, and I really like your website, but I might think, wow, if I wanted to get into presenting, for example, look at all the things these people have done and look how amazing they are. Wow, one day if I ever got, several rungs up the ladder, there'd be the people for me. But starting off, my goodness. And actually, it sounds like because you really understand the journey that people go through, you'd be the perfect people, even to take somebody who was really quite new in their career. But it's a hard balance, isn't it, to get that right?
It is. And going back to the lady in Dubai and in television, it is often the brand new person that I love working with the most. I think sometimes when people are almost halfway through that journey or have done some stuff already, they've picked up a few odd habits, they've gone off on a bit of a sort of a path that might not sort of be actually who they really are, and you've then got to almost start again with them. So yeah, so new and fresh for us is the most exciting. But yeah, that's our challenge is, how do we sort of, it's nearly 30 years worth of working in telly on pretty much all of TV's biggest shows, of pretty much everyone on TV, presenter-wise, musician-wise, whatever it kind of might be, sports stars. Yeah, perhaps our challenge is always to make that relatable. But again, I think that's where the social media side has come into it. My latest post that I've done this morning, Alex, is of my dog, in a sense of like thinking, how can we soften things? How can I sort of, just do something a little bit more fun? Right, I'm going to introduce the third member of the presenter studio, which is my dog. And lots of dog owners out there in a sense of, again, marketability. Who's this for? What do I want to get out of it? There might be some people who like dogs, and therefore that's going to widen my reach. So yeah, we're always thinking, I suppose, of ways of, sharing who we are, what we're about, and a passion. But yeah, as you sort of said, I think as well, so much of the work we do in communications with brands, with people in telly, is down to warmth and really warming things up. And I think it's hard to cheat that. I think you can kind of sniff it out if someone's not warm and friendly. But I think for all of us, if we've got these warm brands, relatable brands, if it's inclusive, if you're giving a speech, if you're giving a presentation, have a conversation rather than talk at people, chat to them, get nice eye contact with people, bring people in, is definitely the way forwards for kind of promoting your business, building a community and honing your brand. Yeah.
Hi everybody, Robbie here. I'm the creator of The Coach's Journey. If you like what you're hearing on this episode, the chances are you'll love An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel. That's a free ebook available at thecoachesjourney.com. It's the most important piece of content I've ever created for coaches, boiling down everything I've learned from this show, from working with master coaches, and from my own experience into one simple model. The model not only tells you the only things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business, but also shows you how they can form a virtuous circle that keeps your coaching business growing. It's all free, and you can find it at thecoachesjourney.com. And there's a link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
There was one part of your website which this really kind of speaks to, I think, what we're talking about, which was maybe the favorite thing, my favorite thing on there. And it wasn't something glossy. I mean, there's really glossy bits of your website, there's beautiful videos, but it's about a free networking event. And it was saying how you run a free networking event for people to come together in the industry. And there was a line in there near the end, which was essentially, we try to run this every year, but sometimes our schedules don't allow. The reason I like it was because it was so human. So it was also saying, in a nice way, in a humble way, we're pretty busy people, which is true. We can't do this. It wasn't setting expectations too high. But there was something about it. There's something about the way that line was crafted about we'll really try to do it when we can. That was just very human. And it was the sort of thing that I think would be different to if your company was absolutely enormous corporate company. It's the sort of language that you wouldn't hear. A massive company would probably not say that. So I think for me, it was a lovely balance of you've got the glossy, impressive side and you've got the testimonials, and you've got all these different things for people to plug into. But there was something in that was a human. And I was thinking, if I wanted to get into that industry, and I was very new to the industry, just seeing someone put that out and saying, basically, we tried to run this thing to help people was really nice and really human and really kind of humble somehow. And I thought that's, to me, is a good balance and a good example. That to me was one of the most memorable things from your website. And it was one line of not something that was selling anything, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I really like that. It's interesting. And I do stand by that sentence. We sometimes don't have time to run.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But it's setting expectation.
Yeah, because you know what? So much I think of my hustle as well is when people come and work with us. Absolutely, if people are like this, the female rugby player at the minute, you know, we're going more of a coaching sort of journey with her. But often people will come for more of a quick fix. But for us, we always sort of say to them, you know, it doesn't end there. If you've done kind of a day's coaching with us, I'll always look for ways to help you. So there is another side to the TV presenter coaching business where we're coaching people for telly, where we get people work. And we used to do all of that for free. So again, often those early mornings for me would be emailing companies back, TV channels, brands, whatever it is, finding presenters for them. I did all of that for free, never took a cut of anyone's salary, just because, again, we loved it so much. We have now had to formalise that because a couple of people sort of made it a little bit hard for us to sort of get enjoyment out of helping them for that we got. Like, why am I doing all this for free when it's sort of quite painful? And also people said they quite like us to formalise it a little bit. It'll be more helpful. But yeah, so I think, so much of what we do behind the scenes is kind of, you know, helping and developing, but doing it sort of silently, really. But again, I think that just comes down from the fact that we love it so much. Yeah.
I think I want to really move on to understanding more about your business and the different things you offer and what you're focused on at the moment. But just before we get there, I was really curious about, and I believe this was one of the motivations for you setting up your business. You were talking about how, like, in TV and generally, it doesn't sound that people think of it as having a career. Like, there's not a very formal structure. You go from bit to bit. And on the one hand, that sounds very exciting. Like, in your first job, which must have been a junior role, you were supporting people on sort of nationally famous programs, right? So to go straight into that is pretty amazing. And yet I'm really interested because that seems to me like an opportunity for coaches, not specifically about TV, but in general. Is I, looking from the outside, wouldn't have realised that. I would have thought there'd be a lot more support. I thought there'd be a lot more support over developing new talent. I would have thought, for example, that maybe the government would have supported it because the industry, TV and film, is so big for the country. So is it something that's improved since you were starting off? And why do you think there isn't that kind of support structure there? Why hasn't that not developed?
It's such a great question, and it's quite a bugbear of mine. So I'm going to have to
tone down your language.
Yeah, answer this in a very polite, considered, intelligent way. Why isn't it there? I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know why it's not there. I mean, have we got better? We've definitely got better in certain areas. Diversity of all the colours of the rainbow. There are definitely schemes set up for that. I don't think there's schemes for everybody. I think one area of diversity for me is age. I think TV is quite an ageist industry still. So, you know, often there'll be schemes for people aged 16 to 21 as part of the diverse range. But where is the scheme for, I don't know, 50 to 65? Or so anyway, I think, you know, we still could be better at that. So there are definitely opportunities if you're part of that diverse, wide umbrella spectrum that we're all having to be better at, and quite rightly so. But sometimes if you're not part of that, it just doesn't exist. And why? I probably would say it's just down to it never has. But I probably would say now more than ever, it's probably more of a monetary thing, a commercial thing. Do we have the spare pocket of money? But for coaches who might be listening to this, oh my gosh, I would say there is so much opportunity in that creative space to help people. And that was one of the things that I absolutely loved when I did the coaching course myself, and then went on to do some sessions with my friend Naina, was that she opened my eyes up to sort of the fact that I could be more considered and that I could navigate myself a little bit better. And also that guiding that she was giving me just blew my mind in a way. My gosh, there are all these things out there that are all there, but I just thought they were so untangible. But of course, they're sort of there, rather than, I suppose, as we've talked about a little bit, my day-to-day hustle. My hustle is fast. It's quick. If I can't get a video out in 10 minutes, I'm really frustrated with myself. If I can't do a post on LinkedIn in 5 minutes, I'm frustrated, because it's part of the quick and the hustle and the quick fixes. Whereas actually in that coaching way, more long form, more considered, a bit like this podcast chat now, I think would be invaluable for people in the creative industry who are just not used to it. And again, that is why then we set up the Presenter Studio, was to just then try and help develop on-screen talent. Since then, I've had quite a lot of meetings with channels. We've been with the BBC, ITV, saying to them, do you want us to come in-house? These are all the people that have come through us. Look at how many of them now are pretty much fronting all of your shows. Do you want us to do something here? Even if it's a free workshop, do you want us to do something? And it was so fascinating because they were like, my God, really, this has come from you, and this person was from you. And wow, that job that we were trying to find a person from, that was actually you that got that person. Like, yeah, it was us, just two of us. So I don't think they even got it. Like, gosh, what is this? And B, they were just sort of just flabbergasted in a way of like, gosh, this is people who are coaching and nurturing and developing. It's just not who we are here. So for me, so frustrating. And we are in telly, I think, getting better at people behind the scenes. So again, if you're wanting to be perhaps a director or a documentary maker, but for on-screen talent, there is, as I'm aware, nothing. There's BBC Talent. I think there's a company called BBC Talent, who again I went and met, and I said at the end of the chat with her, I said to the lady, I think I've given you a headache because I'm just clearly too much. Because I'm just sort of like, my God, for me, BBC Talent, wow, you're meant to be nurturing and developing all this talent. What are you doing? Like, I don't know what you guys are doing. Let's brainstorm, let's develop, let's do something together. Or, and by the end, she was mute. I think she was just shocked about all the stuff that we were sort of doing. So I think creative people definitely need help. And perhaps it's definitely a space where we don't realize that help is out there. Yeah.
It's funny, actually, because I don't know if this is by chance or the sort of people that Robbie attracts, but the co-host of this program, Ruth used to run her own theatre drama company, and Neil used to be a musician of various stripes, including on cruise ships, and then he worked in senior management, I think, at the South Bank Centre. So, and Joey sings. And so I can't really say so much for myself. I used to sing in a choir at school. That's about it. But it's like quite interesting that around the community that Robbie has built around him, and we were members of the community of Robbie's community associated with the podcast before we became co-hosts. And there are actually a lot of creative people, which is really interesting for me because I think there's a really fascinating interplay there. But the idea that there's this kind of fast-paced thing, this hustle culture that you've talked about, and then there's this space for kind of like reflection and longer term thinking that potentially coaches could bring in. And there must be a lot of other industries like this. And so what I'm really hoping the listeners are getting is that I think there's a number of ways to learn from this conversation. One is what you can do with your own business and how to sort of project yourself and bring yourself into your work. One is learning exactly from what Gareth has done with his business and some of the different work that he does. And we're going to go into that in a minute. But the other is just thinking about, the inspiration of what Gareth has been doing, which is to sort of essentially see a problem, but a problem in an area that he's fascinated about, and then to play a part in solving it. because what you're not describing, Gareth, which I think is so important, is you're not describing it as if you saw a monetary opportunity, to set up this company about an issue that you didn't care about, but you thought, ka-ching, that'll be really, really good, right? It sounds very much every round. Yes, you thought there was something that could sustain it, but you've actually been giving up your time for free in aspects because you really, really care about this stuff. And so what I'd love to go on to understand is, when I went to your website, there's so many bits you do. There's, just from what I can remember, there's bits around, finding presenters, finding talent. There's bits where it's working with people who know that this is what they want to do with their lives and supporting them, and those brilliant videos I was talking about earlier. And then there's the stuff which is more about the presentation skills of people who might not use it all the time in their jobs. They don't want to be TV presenters, but they need presentation skills. Tell me, could you try to explain to me about these different facets, how they fit together, and has it emerged organically that you started off mainly focusing on one area and you've expanded? How has that operated?
Yeah, so pretty much very much, I think, set out because of our background in TV as a TV presenter, training, coaching business where we help people get into telly. And that's either running like a career consultation, and sometimes that can be more of a longer form coaching thing, or again, can be a one-off. Or as a 2-day course that we call a fast track program, where we'll take 4 people, but they're all kind of running their own training program, if you like. We've got bespoke scripts for each one of those 4 people because they can often be very, very different. So it might be doctor, might be life coach, actor, radio DJ, so totally 4 different people across 2 days. Or it's the one-to-one work we do. And often the one-to-one work can be more people who've come via an agent, a TV channel. So like when Rylan and AJ were about to do Big Brother's bit on the side for Channel 4, I think it was, Channel 4 brought us in to just help Rylan be less presentery and help AJ just be a bit more AJ. So sometimes we'll go in and do a bit more of a one-to-one. And then there's the business coaching side of it, which has definitely been the arm that keeps on growing and growing and developing. And I think that's what we'll end up doing a lot more of moving forwards, which is either the presentation skills, which is kind of people who have to give presentations, whether that's internally or externally. Media training, so that's anything from kind of people who have to go on telly to talk about their business. But more often than that can be more to do with the social media side of things. So we've just done a load of really, I'm so proud of it. Getting all emotional now. I'm really proud of it. We just did a load of work with Rihanna, her beauty brand called Fenty Beauty. We've just done a load of work with Fenty on, we did a storytelling workshop with them to begin with, just to try and get them all to sort of emote a lot more. And I think that was like a group course, about 50 people, I think. And then we took a load of their makeup artists who go off and train people in stores and that kind of thing. Or, was it stores or kind of, I think it was mainly sort of stores. Or they were doing a little bit of kind of social media stuff, I think, at that point. But we then got hold of all their kind of makeup artists and media trained them, but for socials. And now, I mean, that business is just growing and growing and growing and growing. But the bit that I'm so proud of is John Lewis have just taken them on as a brand. So they're just in a massive nationwide launch with John Lewis. And all of those makeup artists that I did all the coaching with are all the face of it, all on John Lewis. And they've literally done a carbon copy of all the little videos that we were sort of doing with them, going, I do this kind of thing, I do that kind of thing. It literally is a carbon copy of what John Lewis have put out for them. And to see those girls who were so passionate about what they did, but often quite shy about it and often kind of unaware of who they are, what they were doing, what is the tone of voice for kind of Rihanna makeup brand, and just really examining that business, the tone of voice, looking at all the competitors out there and going, right, how can we position you guys to be the most exciting but authentic brand out there? And that's what that business is built on. I suppose the founder, Rihanna, again, we always look at sort of the founder. She's unashamedly Rihanna, very working class, poor background, I think from Barbados, come from nothing, built this beauty brand out of pure passion. So that's what we wanted them all to kind of embody. Don't be unashamed in that British way again, to share your love, bring it to life, but be confident to do it your way. So if your way is a little bit more shy, a little bit more quiet, we'll go there. If your way is a bit more bold and a bit more energetic, we'll do festival makeup for you. So the business side of things, we absolutely love, and that can be all the colours of the rainbow of the different scenarios that business people put themselves in now to promote their business.
So it just sometimes on these podcasts, whether I'm listening to other people or I'm speaking to a guest myself, you have these moments where it's just so beautiful to hear somebody reflect on the work they do, and you're clearly just so proud of it and so enjoy it so much. And I think, that's a privilege sometimes as a coach, which is that you get to be there for people with their successes. And there's this beautiful thing where I think a lot of coaches really enjoy like hearing the successes of other people. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to experience, really, because, quite a lot of the time, culturally, and maybe it's down to capitalism, I don't know, but it's kind of like we, meaning humanity, almost don't want other people's successes, because if someone's succeeding, then they're either succeeding over us or other people must be failing or something like that. But it's brilliant. Even vicariously, I wasn't involved in, I don't know anything about makeup, but I get to hear this beautiful story by interviewing you. And not only has that done good things for the brand, and Rihanna's always seems like an inspirational person to me, but also the things that will have done for the confidence of those people involved will hopefully ripple out way beyond that particular campaign and what they're doing. Giving people a feeling of worth, of connecting with themselves, of their authenticity, of feeling part of something. These are really the stories that humans have been involved in for our history, of feeling part of something, caring about other people, treating each other with kindness. And so, and this is where you were saying about your work, is that if people just looked at your work and just took a snapshot and they're like, oh, you've done all these things, they might expect you to emphasize much more the Rihanna side than the side of the working with these people. But your passion for that is just so nice to hear.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're right. I think one thing for me with the coaching side of things, it can be a bit solitary. It can be quite a lot of working on your own. And I think sometimes when you are hearing someone else's success or journey, sometimes, there is a flip side of that sometimes where it almost reflects back on yourself. You just think, oh, in the interim, well, I've given them sort of a bit of help. Have I sort of got to that next step that I wanted to do?
Yeah.
And I think for all of us, that's quite an interesting sort of thought process to go through. But I kind of have this rule often sort of with friends and socializing, and particularly those of mine, friends who might be in a similar sort of space to me. I think too much of our time can be spent sometimes about the negative of what we kind of haven't got. Whereas actually, I really love celebrating and telling other people and hearing from them, tell me what have you been doing, that, what have you loved this week, just giving people the platform to celebrate unashamedly and to hear that, but also just sharing those stories together, finding other people that work in your space. You said that you've got this community near you of coaches. So you have got a little bit of a companion, and you can have a little group huddle and perhaps a group moan, should you want to have a little moan. But I think it's lovely, to also share what I'm trying to say, sort of similar people in the similar space of you, share their successes, because I think sometimes they can then feed you, and you can look at other people and think, gosh, okay, if I'm going to celebrate their success, what can I take from that, and can that inspire me tomorrow morning to get up and do something? It's an interesting thing, success, isn't it, in hearing success stories and how sometimes they can make us feel different things. But certainly for our clients, again, particularly in that corporate space where, for the TV, sometimes people might come to us thinking it's a quick fix for fame, and some of our clients fly quickly. But in that corporate space, for me, one of the main reasons why I love it is I often think the majority of people in this room at some point are going to have to get up and do something. Whether that's their socials, a presentation, a job interview. And that's what I absolutely love about it, is they're going to have to go and do it. And that's what I loved about the woman in Dubai, is that, we gave all those tips and tricks to kind of grow her business for kind of the social media stuff. But she then went off and did it herself. And again, so I think, don't know where I'm going with all of that. But success and stuff, I think, is lots of things it makes us feel. Yeah.
No, that was hugely helpful. And also what I think it partly comes back to is if we're all trying to be cookie cutters and all trying to just copy what the other person's doing, then our success is really like on a scale. We have to use social media in this way. So do we have the same number of followers as that other person? But if we think about, for example, it's not necessarily a numbers game for us. We want 50 people who are really interested in what we do. There's a brilliant essay out there about this. I think it's called like 1,000 True Fans. It's really worth looking up. But it's the idea that creative people, if they have 1,000, I don't know how arbitrary that number was, but people who will basically buy everything that they produce, that is enough to make a living out of.
Yeah.
And so actually it's that depth of connection with other human beings. And it's also that thing where if we're showing up as the best version of ourselves, nobody else can be that. Perhaps X person will be better than me at certain things, but maybe that's just not me. And so that comparison game can then be more about how brilliant they are at doing their thing. And I really, one of my sort of favorite things is just to meet people who are passionate about what they do, even in industries I know nothing about. There could be somebody in practically any industry. I can't really think of something I wouldn't be interested in if a person spoke about it with passion, because you can hear in that passion why it is that they like it and what it is about the way that their brain is wired or the background they come from that really matters to them. And so I think one of the nice things about all these interviews is, while everybody who comes on the podcast is a coach, there's such a multiplicity of different experiences, and there'll be people who resonate more or less, to each listener. Some listeners will be able to connect more readily with certain people than with others, exactly what you're talking about presenting. But I think there's something in coaching that means we all get to listen to these stories of what makes people tick. And when you're working with these people, whether it's people who want to be presenters or people who need some presentation skills, bless you,
thank you,
then it's important that they, when you get to hear what it means to them, I think that's just such an important part of the journey.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that genuine, pure passion and love, I think, is just so nice. Yeah, I love that. I love people who've got interests, who've got things that they do. And I think, perhaps sometimes we can perhaps not be as sort of creative in our ways, perhaps as coaches, of getting ourselves out there, meeting other people, doing different things, looking for inspiration. I went to a Coldplay gig this week, and the way that man communicates at Wembley was just insane. And that whole performance, that whole night, was all to do with communication. It wasn't a music concert. It was a way that he wanted us all to walk away with, as he said at the top, coming away from the best gig that he's ever done. So he's shown up as the best version of himself. But he wanted us all to feel something, to come away and feel something. And I think, and that all came from the heart. It wasn't from him wanting to be this amazing singer. It was that he wanted to sort of us to have a shared experience. So passions is a big thing for me. If I could have a tattoo, perhaps passion would be one of the words, part of it or something.
I really like that. I just had one more question on this area, and then I'd like to spend a bit of time talking about presentation, sort of tipsy stuff, which I think might be really helpful for the audience. But I was wondering, how you've worked with such big brands and clients, and how do you find these people? Do they find you? Do you pitch to them? And because I was again talking to you about this before the call, but there's a lot of coaches out there who are worried about whether, like, if they want to charge people, whether they can price themselves out of it or not kind of value their own worth when they're approaching people. And for a lot of coaches, until they've had a few successes, for example, with corporates, there's that real barrier about, they don't know me, I don't know them, what do I do? So how does it work for your business?
For the pricing side or for the...
Well, firstly, how do you even engage with them? And then second, I suppose the pricing side is more around, once you engage with them, how do you get them to sign on the dotted line, ultimately, I suppose?
Got you. I suppose first and foremost, we have a website. And that for us does very, very well in a sense of pretty much all the bookings that we'll get for the TV presenter side of things. They won't make it any sort of inquiry and they will just book. And often the ones that do sort of do an inquiry, I pretty much know are the ones that aren't going to book. Seems to be the way that it goes. Quite interesting. And then for the business side of stuff, again, some will come from the website, and often that will come from a member of a team who's been told to find something different. We're bored of kind of the normal corporate style of training. Find me something that the team are going to really engage with that's going to be a bit different. So they might then have trawled Google and found us, because we do then come up for those searches, as I said before, unfortunately, a little bit lower than some of those other ones that perhaps have been doing it just a longer time than us or have got better SEO rankings, whatever it might be. So the majority of the business side of coaching will either come from that longer search or from referrals, really. And then when it comes to the pricing structure, for the TV side of things, because they're sort of booking it on more of a formal course, if you like, that's always set. And that's just a fixed fee. We gifted a couple of courses right at the beginning, and that kind of actually didn't serve us well. We ended up getting kind of people that perhaps didn't want to be there as much as other people in the room, and perhaps weren't the kind of client that should have been there. So we looked at pricing on that, discounts, reductions quite early on. I mean, we started off way cheaper than what we are now. We also, started running our courses at weekends where we might be able to get a reduction on a studio where they closed at a weekend. So again, we were really clever in a way of finding spaces that could work with us, a local space, going and meeting that person, just saying, I'm local, I'm down the road, please help me. And then now we've upped our prices a bit more. We then run courses in the week where we pay, full whack then for the studios that we sort of use. And then pricing for businesses, it's always tailor-made to them because they often come to us with sort of a specific need. And a lot of that pricing for me is down to the amount of prep that I have to do. Right. Which therefore I really explain to that business in a sense of absolutely, you've asked me to do 2 hours worth of coaching for this person. But in order for me to do that 2 hours worth of coaching, I actually need to do 3 days worth of prep. Yeah. Because I've looked at the script that you've now sent to me for that presentation. I need to work on the script, but I can't just do changes and give it back. I'm going to have to do that in the 2 hours. I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z. So then I'll break down that pricing. But again, with the pricing thing, what I've often found with that is I will often ask people to show their cards first, in a sense of sometimes if they've then got a set budget for some things, to say if you are doing more of a group coaching session rather than a one-to-one, which might be more similar to our TV ones where you've got a set price for 10 or 5 sessions, whatever it might be. If we are doing more of a kind of a group thing for a business client, then I'll often just ask them back to say, look, have you got a budget in mind? Is there something that you're working to? And then I can tell you what I can deliver for that price. The pricing thing side of things, we're still finding our way with. But what I would say with that is, what I've kind of learned over the years is, as best we all can, I think we all need to stay true to our worth, but you get value from doing different things. Sometimes I might do a free presentation somewhere because I personally want to build up my own confidence when it comes to speaking to big audiences. You said before that you really liked it. I still get incredibly nervous when I personally get up and doing something. And what I've learned is just the more I kind of do it, like anything, actually the more confident I just become. But then if it's a corporate client where I think, this is going to be a lot of work for us, I really want to do it, but at the same time, I sort of appreciate my own value. I will charge you what I feel should be charged for this session. And if I don't get it, then I'm not going to get it. But it comes back to my own kind of personal value, really, of my own time. A little bit of a pull and push on that. And we've definitely found our way, and our prices have definitely gone up. over the years. We've looked at competitors as well, of what they sort of charge.
It's really helpful. I think two key things you mentioned is the sort of the knowing your worth thing. I think is just, it's just such a useful lesson generally about the way in which people engage with their business. So I think that's so important. And then I really like the thing about, that you'll need the prep time, so that they'll be paying you for the prep time plus the actual intense bit that you might be doing with the client. And I think quite a lot of the time, when you're starting in a business, people forget to price that in. So it's like, oh, this seems good. And actually, wow, it seems like I'm being paid a decent amount for this short amount of time. But then there's all these other things that go around it, which if you don't put into the budget are a difficulty. And the other aspect of that is, I think sometimes that the person booking it doesn't necessarily understand. They're not even being cheeky. They haven't necessarily thought it through, because they're bringing you in to solve a problem. But you know how long that problem will take to solve. You're not taking the mickey in terms of the price or like the amount of time, but it's like, if you want a good job, this is what it's going to take. Yeah. And so it's like trying to negotiate between those things, especially when you're a new business. It takes time to figure it out. And so again, I encourage people to be gentle with themselves, to say that some of these things you just need to test. And what also the other thing that I've heard a lot of people say is, what one client might think is a massive amount of money for you to pitch to them, another client might think is like almost insultingly low, like where you can't be a very good coach then if that's how you value yourself. Yeah. And so sometimes you're just not going to get it right, even when you have a lot of experience.
It is. And that's often why we then will bat it back to them and just say, is there a budget that you've got? And sometimes that budget can be surprising both ways. It can be way bigger than we thought. Or just really small. I mean, we recently worked with a brand who got us back for the second time to do some work. So I just priced it exactly the same as the first time and just sent in the invoice. And then I just got a reply back to say, well, gosh, what is this? Why have you invoiced for so much money? But like, well, I mean, whilst I'm not starting from scratch with you guys, it's still a brand new team, new department, new reason for why we're there. So I've done as much prep. And then the email came back saying, well, this is what we had in mind. And I just said, you know what, just have it all for free. I'm gifting it to you because I just can't accept that amount of money. And it wasn't in a sense of a sort of a snooty thing. It's just in a sense of just my own value, my own worth. I just said to them, just give that money to charity, whatever it might be. But along the way, I've definitely, particularly at the beginning, I've definitely done stuff either at a loss or just to slightly cover my costs. And sometimes some of the stuff I still do is more of a loss earning, do you call it? Where I'll do it because I want that brand on my website, or I personally want that experience, or I'm hoping it might lead to something else, or I just think I'm going to really enjoy it and I just want to do it. So many a different reason, I think, of how we all cost, but at the same time, I think we've all got to know how to pay the bills and how to get that cash. But certainly when you're starting out, I think, as you said, test the water, dip your toe in, keep on trying. We're still learning with it all. And I think I'll always be learning with it all.
That's really good. The main big area that I wanted to make sure we cover, which I don't think we've kind of gone around it, but we haven't covered so explicitly, is, there's lots of coaches listening who, as part of their job, they might have to do presentations, which might include pitching for work. There's a lot of coaches who want to give speeches. There's coaches who do other types of training. So like I do consultancy, and presentation skills are really important. And even for coaches who don't want to do any of that, there's lots of coaches who have people come to them with associated issues around presentations, because lots of people can be quite scared of presentations. So whether it's coaches helping themselves or coaches helping their client, presentations and public speaking and a lot of the things that you help people with will be of such interest. And so I was wondering if there's some tips or approaches or ways to think about things that you could give people to basically help them with that area.
Where shall I start? I think number one, I think think of it as a personality game rather than a presenter game. So, find your own tone of voice. We talked before about that personal brand. What are your three things? Does that help you kind of find your own unique but authentic voice rather than writing a presenter script? Number two, I'd always say with any presentation, and it comes again, I think, from our background in telly, is start with a blank piece of paper. In a sense of, for me, it should be a creative opportunity to do something different. It's the same perhaps when you're setting yourself as a coach, think, how can I do this differently? What's my unique positioning? Same with any presentation. I would always start with a blank piece of paper and think, what can I do? And then I often get little sticky notes out, which kind of forces my hand to sort of almost like write a kind of a running order, really, if you like. And on each one of those sticky notes, I'll just kind of put one word or one sentence that kind of is what that bit of that presentation is going to be about. So very quickly, visually on my little kind of glass table, if I'm working from home, I've got a snapshot of what that presentation looks like. And then I might then start scripting it, whatever it might be. But kind of having that overview, that running order, I think is really, really important because it helps you with the light and the shade, audience interaction, where you're going to take your breath. And then the last sort of tip I would say, which I think is a really important one, is sort of just, well, I'm going to give you two more for now, but ask me to give more, is sort of you start, how you start something, I think really influences everything that's to come. And I think often kind of starts or ends, we'd call them, can sometimes be a bit long, a bit baggy, a bit unprepared, whereas actually the viewer wants to get into it, in a sense, cut down the pleasantries, cut down the big intro, start giving them value. It's a bit like how people watch television. If I don't like it, I'm going to channel hop.
Yeah, or TikTok or Instagram or interrupt. But that social media stuff is very much like that, isn't it? Grab their attention or not.
Yeah, definitely. And, how many of us have watched a presentation? We kind of watch it for, 20 seconds, and then actually we pick up our phone and just start scrolling through. Or if we're watching something, start looking at emails and have it as a passive thing. But you want to hook people in quickly. So a nice punchy, pacey in. And then the other thing that we help clients with is time, actually. In a sense of, I think sometimes when it comes to presentations, we can not allow ourselves in a way to be restricted by time. But again, my background in telly, we're always working to time, whether it's a 30-minute show, an hour show, a 3-minute film for the one show, you're in, which is going to be 30 seconds. Your next item going to be 3 minutes. We're very, very time driven. And I think sometimes when people create content, whether it's for your socials, a presentation, we forget about that running order or that working to time. But sometimes if you work to time, it can give you a really quick and easy framework to do. So one of the last courses that we worked, we had a lady on it, was a bridal wear owner from Solihull. Really quite shy, quite introverted, was there to try and build any sort of confidence to put herself front and center on her socials. So I just said to her, every week, just put a really simple video, 30 seconds of your favorite designer or favorite dress that week, and just do it for 30 seconds. And I would always give it structure, an in, 3 things, and an out, and that's it. So then that's a really quick and easy cheat of putting out some content and bank them all in one day. So get your daughter with you, who's also on the course, to film 10 in one day, but you've got that pre-written structure, so it shouldn't take you any more than 1 hour to do 10 videos. And then you've got 10 weeks worth of content, 2 months worth of content. You do it in an hour. So yeah, a few little tidbits there.
That's also so helpful. And I think, when you think about it strategically like that, like you were talking about timing, you were talking about the sticky notes, I think it makes it less intimidating in a way, because I think that sometimes people don't think about these structures, these tips, these ways that other people do it. It's not something we're necessarily taught in school either. And there's one particular thing that I wanted to ask you, because actually it's 2 questions, because it's 2 things that I'd say I struggle with presenting or sort of pitching. Is one thing is that I think, and as I get older, I think this is becoming less of a problem, but I think about if I'm sort of presenting to a group of people, I'm what I find is that because I want to be credible, give them value, have them like what I'm doing, I have the tendency to put too much in. So that like when I'm planning, I'm like, okay, we're going to cover all these things. I'm going to do all these activities with them. And what I've realized over time is that if you have space to breathe, firstly, it's better as a presenter because it's more enjoyable. Secondly, the way in which people learn, I think, is much more from interaction and discovery on themselves rather than the best insights come when they do it. It's a bit like coaching. And the other issue is that then you're always under pressure for time. Do you have any, it doesn't necessarily have to be tips, but it might be just interesting to see whether this has also been your experiences. As your confidence grows with what you do you find that you naturally, like if you're training people, for example, that you try not to squeeze too much in because you know that they're going to get value from whatever you give them? Like, how does that work in your mind? Or are you still like, because your TV head on, you're like 3 minutes of that, something, how does it work?
I'm still quite bad at that. And I'm very much what you just said at the beginning about cramming so much in. I'm quite an over-preparer. Always my concern is, have people got what they wanted and a little bit more? Yeah. But that, I think, then is when the coaching side of things comes in. And it's one of the things that I really learned for myself when I did the Mo course, was the breath that Naina, who ran the course, gave it. So she would give us a little exercise to do. We'd all have a little go. We'd go and kind of discuss it, perhaps in our little group as well. We'd then have a break. Then we'd come, or perhaps then we'd go back and then we'd discuss it collectively, and then we'd have a break. And I couldn't believe it. And I came back, I said to Leon, I said, we've just done 2 exercises in the morning, like 1 in the afternoon, and we had like 4 coffee breaks or 5 coffee breaks. And for me, I was just like, my God, that's the total opposite of how I'm working. It's just so quick. And I think that is the beauty of that coaching side of things. You're right, that reflection, that time to reflect, and the time to kind of explore together. So I'm still learning with that, and I definitely need to be better at that myself. I think often as well, when we do the TV coaching side of things, people need a show reel. So often what we're doing across 2 days is all filmed. And then my challenge off the back of those 2 days is to make it look like they haven't done a 2-day course, that they've been working. This is an amazing catalogue of unique footage that they've done. So that's why in those courses, I'm always pushing it. I'm thinking, gosh, I haven't quite got Alex to sort of give me what I really feel Alex can do yet. So actually, if I shorten the lunch break a little bit, I can kind of get what I need for the edit for Alex. So when Alex gets his edit, he goes, my God, I'm really good. Whereas again, with that coaching business side of things, it's me then thinking, actually, we can let this breathe. We can give people time more to explore, make their own decisions, which I think long-term wise is way more valuable. So again, when we worked with Rihanna and did stuff with them, they were brilliant with us because they allowed us to book in days worth of coaching that allowed us to take people on a much slower journey. So therefore, the journey was much slower, and therefore, I think the results that we got at the end were way more long term, because I haven't cheated it as a producer, where I can kind of nip and tuck and give you some little tips and tricks. Change that, Alex. Actually, you've gone off, you've done it, you've come back, and actually, you've delivered it pretty much as I think you should have delivered it. But that takes time and that takes breath. So yeah, really interesting. I've had the same thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and I think my second question, we've kind of covered it. It's quite a lot of relation with the first, but it's kind of it's what you said about the doing a lot of preparation beforehand, which is that I really like it when you have some things that are emergent. So, for example, I imagine when you're doing your training, sometimes something will happen, like just happens naturally, where there's kind of like a teachable moment that you didn't expect. Because human beings are complicated, and we can't think through, even if we prepare a lot, we can't think through all the scenarios. So what I find is, if I prepare something, but I'm like, okay, I've got these things I definitely want to cover, and there's a general theme to the day, but oh, actually, somebody's brought something up, which is the real thing they should all be discussing. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen, but they're the experts in their own field. So if I was doing training for an organization, say, and I think, okay, they need support in these areas, and then someone introduces a new variable, do you know, they say something like, you know, the thing is, this is all good, but the real issue is that these people never talk to those people. And it's like, well, what do I do? Because you're not hopefully then going to say, yeah, that's lovely, but next on the script is to cover these 5 bullet points. You'll be like, okay, let's go with that. And I think if you take a coaching approach to see what's emergent, and you also check in with people to say, what's happening for you now, what's important for you now, what matters to you now, then that presentation becomes something a bit more co-created, I suppose. That's kind of what I'm driving at. Do you feel that? Does it happen with some cohorts and not with others? What's the
I love that. And I think you're right. I think that often goes back in a way, sometimes if you're working with a company, it can be the person that's booked the coaching isn't necessarily sort of the one that's got the need. They've done the booking. You know, however hard you've tried can sometimes, you know, absolutely, this is what I want to deliver. But then when you get there, you think, oh, hang on a minute. This is a little bit different. And again, I suppose that's what makes me really, really nervous often when I work into businesses, because I just don't know what they're going to be like. I've got no idea what we're going to get, what the vibe of that room is, what the room is going to be when I kind of get there. So you've got to have that flexibility. But again, I think that's the value of the coaching mindset for coaches that you've got, which is very different to my TV mindset, where this is what I need, and I've got half an hour, which is plenty of time, because I know I kind of get what I need from you, Alex. But that coaching mindset, I think, is more, finding and developing people's needs as you go to make sure that they also get out of it what they want. But that can be quite hard. I've done a lot of those kind of sessions. Recently, I did one with a food brand, where there was one lady in it, very confident. I've done lots of presenting. She kept on telling everyone in the room how confident, and she'd done lots of stuff, and kept on sort of steering the room and me in a very sort of directional way that she kind of wanted. I think a lot of it was about script writing and how do you write a script or something. And it wasn't that session. That wasn't what the session was that you booked. And her feedback was quite, because they all sort of gave little feedback that the company wanted to give me. It was quite cutting the feedback. It was very personal of what she brought to the space. So sometimes, again, you just have to manage that too. And I am fed back to the company and said, thank you so much for that. And lovely to see Joanna has written that. But as you know, that wasn't what the purpose of the session was. But if you'd like me to come back and do more of that, I will. And on the day, I did take Joanna aside and try to help her as best I could. But obviously that wasn't what we were there for. So I think sometimes you have to be careful for those slight dud steers as well, but done in a way. Yeah.
That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought that. That's a really nice build on what I was saying, which is that, of course, going with the flow can be disruptive. It can be one person hogging the limelight, or it can sometimes be that, there's time and space for this sort of fluidity, but there's also certain things that need to get done. So when you were talking about sort of the showreel thing, it's like, why are we all here? We're not just here to have a nice cup of coffee. But what I imagine when you were doing, like when you were having your coaching or on a coaching course, is that what I find is sometimes it feels like, we haven't done that much, and yet we've created magic. Like it's like, because we've been wholeheartedly in the room, because we've all been focused together, because we've built respect and trust for each other, all coaching things, which are actually like, if you looked at like a checklist, it might not be that impressive. But if you think about how much that's going to last for people, how people felt, how much they connected to each other, is magic. It's a different way of...
Massively. And again, on that food course that I did, there was one girl in that space that she was a runner. She was like an office runner. And instantly, as soon as I sort of saw her walking into the room, she had this great energy about her. She was a bit kooky. And for me, very on brand for what that business was all about. She just looked like the business should look like, the personification of that brand, I would say. And therefore, again, it was allowing in that space to give people like that who was in a way there to serve people teas and coffees, actually giving her the space to shine in that more coaching way where you've kind of got to change and adapt what you're doing to the vibe and the people in the room. And I think your advice there, Alex, as well, of checking in. Sometimes perhaps I don't do that enough, of just having that pause, checking, is everyone all right? You know, keeping an eye on the time for that, because again, that could open up a whole can of worms, is probably a good thing to do as well. Because, yeah, we can all prepare, and I think we can all have that map of what we want to achieve, but certain individuals can change. And the reason why I was giving that example of that one girl is, if I didn't let that session breathe, and if I then didn't change and adapt what I was doing to allow her actually to come forward, I wouldn't have done my job. And actually, so often I think when we do these coaching sessions with businesses, just simply to allow those people the time to be in the room together. Often one of the first things I say to each other, how well do you all know each other? Is this the first time you've come in, you know, with remote working now? You know, just allowing them collectively to do stuff together, I think, is gold. And sometimes we're just that little icing on the cake, giving them things to think about. So, yeah, being mindful of that, I think, is a really clever observation, Alex, and certainly something that I need to keep on thinking about myself.
I think we all need to that, but it's kind of that, like when you contract as a coach, it's checking what's important to people and checking what's changed. And as you say, when you're running something, it is that balance to, you know, you need to keep things moving, or you need to check those disruptions. But it's just kind of, if you're going to create that magic together, it's checking how everybody's feeling that moment. Someone might have had a phone call in the lunch break that's completely changed their week. You know, it's so hard to be able, the energy might have shifted and you don't know why, and you need to make it apparent in some way, if you can do that in a respectful way. So we're coming towards the end of the conversation. I've enjoyed it massively. I just want to make sure that I give you the space. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you want to bring up? Anything that you want to mention you're doing? Is there anything at all that you wanted us to
That's so kind. The only thing I'm going to say is, you very kindly earlier said that I was an actor. Long gone are my acting days, Alex, but thank you for that. Just in case anyone's thinking, I could do with him in my new Hollywood movie.
You're in Coronation Street. That's enough for me. Yeah. You'll always be an actor for me after that.
Yeah. So please, no acting inquiry. But the other thing that we haven't talked about, which I'm also very proud of, is the own presenting work that I do. So I now also practice what I preach, the producing side of things. I've sort of, as I said at the beginning, it's still a part of me. But as I've got older, I've got a little bit more selfish of what I also want to do. And one of my loves and one of my sort of growths, I think, is my own presenting. So I do quite a bit of presenting for TV or for corporates or presentations or public speaking, that kind of thing. So that's another lovely string to my portfolio career that I'm also doing more of and really love as well.
Amazing. And we've mentioned multiple times about your website and your socials, or whatever main places that people should go to find you. We'll, in the show notes, we'll link to everything that we can. Where do you think people should go? Is your website the main place? What do you think?
Yeah, so website, presenterstudio.com. Instagram, I think, is The Presenter Studio. And LinkedIn, I think, is Gareth Davies, Davies, 2408, 24th of August, I think, is my LinkedIn. But as I said, I'm rubbish on LinkedIn. So if you can't actually find me on LinkedIn, it's because I've even given the wrong name on LinkedIn. Now, I'm not rubbish. It's just a platform that I want to be better at. And you very kindly said that you might give me some words of wisdom on that, Alex, too.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take you up.
Absolutely. But and also, you didn't mention it, but I found you on TikTok as well.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, TikTok. Yeah, I'm sort of, I keep on being told TikTok's an amazing platform for what you do. I think for coaches as well. Amazing platform. Yeah. But staying true to the advice that you give, Alex, before, I think we all also need to be kind to ourselves. Find those platforms that you enjoy, that you can nurture, develop. So Instagram is always my primary. TikTok, should I remember sometimes, I'll chuck something on TikTok, which I think is The Presenter Studio or Presenter Studio. Not sure. But yeah, I'm also on TikTok as a business. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll try to link to everything. And thank you so much for your generosity with your time coming on the show. I just think it's been so interesting, and you've given some real nuggets of wisdom for the coaches who are listening out there. And I think it's interesting to see how you've progressed your career and the different things you've grappled with. But the last thing I'd like to give our listeners, which I think was really nice and shows your humility, is that when I asked you the question about that I find it difficult to I over prepare or I try to cram too much into a presentation, is that you said that you're an over preparer or you find that difficult. And I think it's a really important lesson to end on, which is that, you as a coach or Gareth and myself, we can all have expertise in our areas and we can be very good at what we do, but it doesn't mean that we're perfect. And also we always keep learning. Like, we all have tendencies that we want to change or get better at. And if we keep learning and we keep that passion, we're going to grow and develop in what we do. And so your example, Gareth, that you seem so passionate about what you do, but also that desire to keep learning is something that's really inspirational and hopefully very useful to our listeners. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Alex. Great to meet you, and well done for all your amazing stuff too. I've done my research on you, Alex. Very impressed with everything that you do, and I'm so grateful for you and for your time and for giving me the opportunity to have a little chat with you. So thank you so much.
Hi everybody, Robbie here, creator of The Coach's Journey, and just a few quick things to share with you before you go on to the rest of your day. Thanks for getting all the way to the end of this episode. I'm imagining that means you think the work we're doing is important and valuable, and we think so too. And if you love this episode, I want to tell you about two things I think you'll love. Firstly, I think you'll love my free ebook, An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel, which you can get at thecoachesjourney.com. It's my attempt to boil everything I've learned from my years supporting, coaching, and interviewing coaches about their businesses into one simple model containing the fundamentals of any sustainable coaching business, the only things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business, and the things that if you don't do them, you can't have a sustainable coaching business. You can get it for free at thecoachesjourney.com. And if you love this episode, I think you'll love the Coach's Journey community. It's my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. You pay $20 or £100 a month, and you get access to a certain number of group coaching calls a year, plus one-to-one time with me if you're a full member, and various other benefits too. And of course, you get the chance to be connected to other amazing coaches on their own journeys. You can join the community at thecoachesjourney.com/community. Thanks so much to everyone who's supported The Coach's Journey over the years, but in particular, thank you to Alex Whitten, Alan Bedding, Jessica Jem, Nikki Marsden, and Vivian Tai for your ongoing support. Thank you too for listening, and we hope to have you back with us on The Coach's Journey podcast sometime soon.